The world was silent. The skies were always gray. The rivers were dry. The cities stood like empty bones of a forgotten giant. For 300 years, the Varlock ruled Earth without fear. They were tall, with black metal skin and glowing yellow eyes. Their voice was like thunder, but they spoke very little. They didn't need to. One look from them, and humans obeyed. There were no more countries, no flags, no armies. There was only survival. Every morning, humans walked to their assigned work areas. They repaired machines, cleaned ruins, and built new towers for the Varlock. At night, they returned to their small, cold shelters. Speaking loudly was forbidden. Smiling was rare. Dreaming was dangerous. The Varlock allowed no weapons, no radios, no secret meetings. They had crushed every human rebellion within minutes, long ago. After that, humans learned to bow their heads and keep their thoughts hidden. Or so the Varlock believed. Under the broken city of Old Chicago, deep inside the forgotten subway tunnels, a few humans still dared to hope. They called themselves the Last Light. Commander Eli Vance was one of them. He was a tall man, with sharp eyes and a scar running across his cheek. His clothes were old and dirty, but his spirit was sharp like a knife. He sat in a dark room, lit only by a small fire. Around him were a few others. Dr. Mara, the medic, Finn, the tech genius, and about 20 others who had lost everything but their will to fight. Eli stood up and spoke in a low, steady voice. "Today we found something," he said. The others leaned closer. Hope was dangerous, but they needed it. Mara pulled out a dusty metal box from under her coat. It was old, very old, covered in strange human symbols. She placed it carefully on the ground. This, she said, was hidden under the old university ruins. It's from before the fall. Finn wiped the dust away and stared. "It's a weapon," he whispered. "A human weapon." A cold silence filled the room. A human weapon. Something powerful enough to fight the Varlock. Eli's heart pounded in his chest. No one had seen real human weapons for centuries. The Varlock had destroyed them all. Or so everyone thought. Now, maybe, just maybe, there was a chance. "Is it working?" someone asked. Finn shook his head. "I don't know yet. It's damaged, maybe beyond repair, but if I can fix it, we might have something." The group looked at each other. Fear, hope, doubt. It was all there in their eyes. They had spent their lives hiding, running, surviving. Now Eli was asking them to do something more dangerous than anything before. He was asking them to fight. Eli leaned in close to the fire. His face looked older under the orange light. "The Varlock think they have broken us," he said, voice low but full of fire. "They think we are nothing but scared animals. They have ruled without fear for too long." He paused. "But tonight, we remind them, humans were never made to kneel." The fire crackled. No one spoke. No one needed to. The decision was made. Far above, on the ruined surface of Old Chicago, a Varlock patrol moved slowly through the empty streets. Their yellow eyes scanned the darkness. They didn't fear anything. They didn't expect anything. But hidden deep underground, the Last Light was moving. They were gathering old tools, broken drones, and pieces of forgotten history. They were whispering old stories of bravery into the night air. And they were planning something that had not been done in 300 years. A rebellion. Eli walked alone down the dark tunnel after the meeting. He touched the metal box hidden inside his coat. It was heavy, like a piece of destiny. For a moment, he stopped and looked up through a crack in the tunnel roof. Far above, he could see the gray sky, broken by the ruined skeletons of skyscrapers. And he smiled, the first real smile in years. Tonight, the silence would end. Tonight, the fire would be lit again. And the Varlock would learn fear. The underground base buzzed with nervous energy. For the first time in years, the humans had a mission. A real mission. Commander Eli stood in front of a rough map drawn on the wall. He pointed at a spot marked in red. "This is their energy depot," he said. "Every patrol drone, every Varlock weapon runs from this place. If we steal even a few power cells, we can build something strong." Dr. Mara looked worried. "They can detect heartbeats," she reminded him. "Fear, anger, anything." Eli nodded. "We move slow. We stay calm. If your heart races, you die." The room fell silent. Everyone understood. This was not just a mission. This was a death sentence if they failed. Later that night, under the cover of heavy fog, the small team moved through the broken tunnels. Eli led the way, his steps light but sure. Finn followed, carrying a small hacking device on his back. 3 others, hand-picked for their steady nerves, came behind. Above them, the city was dead. No lights, no sounds, only the cold breath of wind whispering through the broken towers. Eli gave hand signals. Left. Stop. Right. No one spoke. No one made a sound louder than a whisper. They reached a torn-open sewer gate. Beyond it, the Varlock Energy Depot stood tall, a black fortress glowing with pale blue light. 2 Varlock guards patrolled the entrance. Their heavy feet shook the ground slightly. Their yellow eyes scanned the ruins, sharp and cold. Finn set up his device behind a broken car. "I can jam their scanners for 2 minutes," he whispered. "No more." Eli gave a small nod. 2 minutes is all we need. The plan was simple. In theory, slip in, steal 3 power cells, get out, silent as ghosts. But as Eli moved closer to the depot gate, his heart betrayed him. It started beating faster. The cold fear of death wrapped around him like ice. Thump thump, thump thump. He closed his eyes for a second. Breathe. Focus. He imagined the faces of the people back in the tunnels. The children, the old ones, the ones who still dared to hope. He forced his heart to slow down. Steady. They move his one. Finn hacked the outer gate silently. A soft click told them it was open. Eli slipped inside first, followed by Finn and the others. Inside, blue lights blinked on rows of machines. The power cells were stored in glass chambers along the wall. Each cell was no bigger than a human hand, but it glowed with a strange, living light. Eli moved toward them. His hands were steady now, his mind sharp. 1, 2, 3. He pulled the cells free and passed them back to Finn, who carefully packed them in a lead-lined bag. So far, so good. But just as they turned to leave, the unthinkable happened. One of the human team members, a young man named Rick, tripped over a loose cable. The noise was small, barely a whisper, but it was enough. The nearest Varlock turned its head sharply. Its yellow eyes narrowed. It began moving toward the depot gate. Eli froze. The others froze. Finn looked at Eli, panic flashing in his eyes. "What now?" he mouthed silently. Eli made a quick decision. He pointed at a broken ventilation shaft nearby. Escape Plan B. The team raced toward it. Eli helped push Finn and the others through the narrow opening first. The Varlock reached the gate just as Eli pulled himself into the shaft. Behind him, the heavy metal door slammed shut. An alarm started blaring, loud and terrible. But they were gone. For now. The team didn't stop running until they were deep inside the tunnels again. Breathing hard, hearts racing. They had done it. They had stolen the first real hope in 300 years. Back in the underground base, the group gathered around as Finn carefully unpacked the 3 glowing cells. Mara touched one lightly. It felt warm, almost alive. "This," Finn whispered, wonder in his voice. "This could change everything." But Eli wasn't smiling. He stared at Rick, the young man who had tripped. He noticed something strange. Rick was too calm, too clean. Eli's eyes narrowed. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The underground tunnels were darker than usual. The air felt thick, heavy. Eli couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The small victory from the night before had quickly turned sour. They had stolen the Varlock power cells. They had made it out alive. But now, there was something about the group that felt off. Eli sat in his small, dimly lit room, his mind racing. Finn had been working nonstop, examining the stolen cells. Mara had her own corner, treating a few wounded rebels who had returned from other missions. And Rick, the young man who had tripped and almost cost them everything, had barely spoken a word since they got back. It wasn't like him. Eli's thoughts were interrupted by the soft click of footsteps in the corridor. "Commander." It was Mara's voice. She appeared at the door, looking uneasy. "Something's not right. Rick, I don't think he's being honest with us." Eli looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Mara hesitated. "He's too calm, too clean. He hasn't even broken a sweat since we got back. He's different. I don't trust him." Eli stood up. "I'll talk to him." The small room where Rick was sitting felt colder than the rest of the base. Rick was facing the wall, his back to Eli. The young man's shoulders were tense, but he didn't move when Eli entered. Eli stood in front of him, arms crossed. "Rick," he said quietly, "you've been quiet since last night. What's going on?" Rick finally turned to face him. His eyes were wide, but there was something in them. Something Eli couldn't place. "I'm fine, Commander," Rick said, his voice too steady, too calm. But Eli wasn't fooled. "You don't look fine," Eli said firmly. "You know something. Tell me." Rick's eyes darted to the door, as if expecting someone to walk in. Eli stepped closer, his voice lower. "Is there someone listening? Are you in danger?" Rick looked down, his hands trembling. I wasn't supposed to be here," he whispered. "I was sent to watch you. All of you. I'm not one of them, but I work for them." Eli's heart stopped. "You're a spy?" he demanded. Rick nodded, his face pale. "Yes, I was sent to infiltrate your group, to learn your plans. But when I saw what you were doing, when I saw what you had, I couldn't go through with it. I was going to warn you, but I didn't know who to trust anymore." Eli's mind raced. This explained so much: the calmness, the strange distance, the way Rick had never really seemed afraid. "You've been lying to us this whole time," Eli said, his voice low, full of anger. Rick shook his head. "I didn't want to, but they know everything. The Varlock. They'd been watching your movements from the start. I wasn't supposed to warn you, but I did. You have to listen to me. They're sending something worse than their patrols." "Who's sending it?" Eli asked sharply. Rick hesitated for a moment, then spoke. "Another group, more powerful, not the Varlock. They're the Hunar, a species far worse than the Varlock. They come from a star system on the edge of the galaxy. They will destroy everything." Eli felt a chill run through him. The Hunar were a name whispered in old, forgotten stories, tales of aliens who left nothing but ash behind. They were cruel, merciless, and most importantly, they feared nothing. "How do you know this?" Eli demanded. "I overheard it," Rick said. "The Varlock. They have been preparing. They know the rebellion is growing. They're calling in reinforcements." Eli's mind spun. The Varlock had ruled Earth for centuries. They thought the humans were weak, but now they were bringing in Hunar. The very idea of it was terrifying. "What do we do?" Mara's voice came from the doorway. She had been listening, and Eli noticed her eyes were filled with concern. "I don't know," Eli said slowly, turning back to Rick. "If the Varlock and the Hunar are coming, we don't have much time." Rick nodded, his eyes desperate. "They're already here. Not in full force, but they've arrived. They're waiting for the Varlock to give the signal." Eli turned to Mara. "We need to warn the others. We can't let them surprise us. Not now." Minutes later, the base was in chaos. People ran from room to room, gathering weapons and supplies. The small, fragile hope that had sparked in their hearts when they stole the Varlock power cells now felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. The humans had always fought alone, but now, with the Varlock and the Hunnar closing in, they would have to fight together, for their very survival. As the team prepared for the battle that was coming, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. Rick had betrayed them, yes, but his warning was real. The Hunnar were out there, waiting. And if they didn't act fast, it would be the end for everyone. The sky above the tunnels was still, silent. But soon, the storm would come. And no one knew who would survive. The air in the underground base felt heavy, thick with the tension of a storm waiting to break. Eli stood before the makeshift map they had drawn in the middle of the room, surrounded by his team. Their faces were filled with fear and determination. "We don't have much time," Eli said, his voice firm. "The Hunnar are coming. We need to move before they bring the full force of the Varlock down on us." Mara nodded, her face pale but steady. "We need a plan, a real one." Finn, still working on the power cells, glanced up. "I've been thinking about that. The cells, they're not just power sources. I think they can be used to fuel something else. Something bigger." Eli raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Finn motioned to a pile of old machinery and wires in the corner of the room. "I've been going through the old blueprints, and I found something. Something hidden deep in the archives. It's an old weapon. A human weapon, before the fall. It was never finished, but with these cells, I think we can bring it to life." Eli's heart raced. Could this be the answer they needed? "What kind of weapon?" he asked. Finn hesitated. "I'm not sure yet. It's called the Aether Cannon. It was designed to harness massive energy, enough to disable entire fleets. But it was never completed. We don't know if it will even work." Eli exchanged a glance with Mara. If there was even a chance it could work. "How long will it take to finish?" Eli asked. "Maybe a few days," Finn said. "But I'll need everyone's help. We'll need to gather parts from the old city and repair a few systems before we can even think about testing it." Eli nodded. "We don't have much time. If we're going to do this, we have to move fast." The team split up to gather what they needed. Finn worked non-stop in the base, his hands moving with expert precision as he soldered wires and connected components. Mara helped him where she could, while Eli organized the others to scout the area and keep watch for any signs of the Varlock or the approaching Hunnar. Rick, despite his betrayal, remained silent. He did not help. He did not speak. He just sat in a corner, his face clouded with guilt. Eli couldn't decide what to do with him. He was a liability, but the team needed him for now. As the hours passed, the base was filled with the hum of activity. Every minute counted. Every second was vital. Late that night, Eli and Mara went out to scout the outskirts of the old city. The streets were empty, a ghostly reminder of the world that had once been. But they had to be sure. If the Hunnar had already arrived, they needed to know where to strike first. They moved quickly, staying low to the ground, their senses sharp. Suddenly, they heard a noise, a faint, metallic clink. Eli stopped, his hand raised. "Get down," he whispered. They crouched behind a fallen building, eyes scanning the dark streets. A group of Varlock soldiers marched down the street, their heavy boots thudding in unison. Their yellow eyes scanned the surroundings, always alert. Eli's heart raced. If they were this close, it wouldn't be long before they discovered the base. They couldn't afford to be found. Not yet. Mara's voice was a whisper. "We need to get back. They're getting closer." Eli nodded, but as they moved to retreat, a figure stepped out from behind the shadows. It was Rick. His eyes were wide, filled with fear. "Commander," he whispered urgently, "I've heard something. The Hunnar, they've already arrived. They're not waiting for the Varlock. They've begun their attack already. We need to leave now, before it's too late. Eli's eyes narrowed. How do you know this? I overheard them, Rick said, his voice shaky. They're setting up in the old government building. They've already started deploying their forces. Eli didn't hesitate. We have to warn Finn and the others. By the time they returned to the base, Finn had made significant progress on the Aether cannon. It was still incomplete, but it was beginning to take shape. He looked up as Eli and Mara entered the room. We're ready, Finn said. I've connected the power cells. The weapon will be able to fire soon. Eli stood tall, his face grim. We don't have time to test it. We have to go now. Finn nodded, his hands still shaking from the pressure of the moment. Let's move then. They gathered their things and prepared to leave. Rick, still standing in the corner, stared at the floor. Eli looked at him one last time. He knew the young man had betrayed them, but for now, they had bigger problems. The Varlock and the Hunter were coming, and they had to face them together. Outside, the sky had darkened even further, as if the world itself knew what was about to happen. The streets were eerily quiet, the wind cold and sharp. The group moved through the shadows, avoiding any patrols. The old government building loomed in the distance, an empty skeleton of what it once was. The Varlock had already taken over parts of the structure, but the Hunter were rumored to be inside, waiting. They had no time to waste. Eli could feel the weight of the moment. This could be their last stand. As they approached the building, Finn glanced at the group. It's time, he said, his voice steady, despite the fear in his eyes. Eli nodded. This is it. If we fail, everything ends here. But they didn't have a choice. The old government building loomed ahead, a dark, crumbling monument to a forgotten past. The team moved swiftly through the streets, their eyes darting from shadow to shadow, careful not to make a sound. Eli's heart raced. Every step felt like it could be their last. We're almost there, Finn whispered, his eyes scanning the path ahead. He clutched a portable device that could override the building's security systems. Eli nodded. Keep moving. We don't have time for mistakes. Rick, trailing behind, remained silent. His earlier betrayal still hung in the air like a dark cloud. But there was no time for questions now. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, heavy, purposeful. Eli's heart skipped a beat. The Varlock patrols were getting closer. We need to get inside, now, Eli said, his voice urgent. Finn, can you disable their sensors? Finn nodded and moved forward, activating the device. The low hum filled the air as the security system flickered and went silent. The entrance was now clear. Eli led the way into the building, moving cautiously through the dimly lit halls. The walls were cracked and broken, reminders of the chaos that had once consumed the city. Now, they were empty, except for the enemies who had made it their new stronghold. The team moved through the corridors, each step bringing them closer to their goal. The Aether cannon, the only hope they had of surviving the coming attack, was in Finn's hands. They couldn't fail. The Hunter were closing in. They had no idea what they were capable of, but they knew it would be devastating. We're almost there, Finn said, his voice tight with anxiety. Eli stopped in front of a large steel door. He glanced at the others. This is it. Get ready. We don't know what's waiting on the other side. They prepared for the worst. Mara checked her weapon, while Rick stood a few steps back, eyes darting nervously. Eli couldn't help but notice the fear in his eyes. It was clear that the young man was struggling with his past decisions, but Eli didn't have time for that. They had to focus on the task at hand. Finn approached the control panel beside the door and began hacking into it. The seconds dragged by, each one feeling like an eternity. Eli held his breath. Then, with a soft click, the door slid open. Beyond it was a massive chamber, filled with machines, computers, and strange, alien technology. And at the far end of the room, standing before a massive control console, was the Varlock commander, the one who had led the invasion of Earth. His cold, yellow eyes turned toward them as they entered, and a sinister smile spread across his face. "You've made it this far," the Varlock commander said in a deep, gravelly voice. "But it ends here." Behind him, several Hunter soldiers emerged from the shadows, their bodies towering and armored, their eyes glowing with an unsettling light. Eli's heart clenched. The Hunter were even worse than he had imagined. They were towering giants, their forms covered in thick, dark armor. Their weapons gleamed with deadly energy, and their presence sent a chill through the room. "We're not afraid of you," Eli said, his voice steady despite the fear creeping in. He raised his weapon, signaling to the others to do the same. The Varlock commander chuckled. "You should be. The Hunter do not fear death. They thrive on it." Eli's mind raced. He had no choice. They had to make their move now. "Finn," he shouted, "activate the Aether Cannon." Finn rushed forward, positioning the power cells into the cannon. The hum of energy filled the room as the Aether Cannon powered up. The Varlock commander's eyes narrowed. "You think that thing will stop us?" he sneered. "You're wasting your time." Eli didn't wait for the commander's next move. He nodded to Finn, who pulled the lever. A blinding burst of light erupted from the Aether Cannon, its energy crackling through the air like a storm. The blast hit the Varlock commander square in the chest, throwing him back against the wall. But the damage wasn't enough. The commander got back to his feet, his eyes burning with rage. The Hunter soldiers stepped forward, their weapons raised. It was clear they weren't going to go down without a fight. "We need to fight back," Eli said. Now. The battle erupted in an instant. The sound of gunfire filled the air as the humans and their enemies clashed. Eli dove behind cover, his weapon blazing as he shot at the Hunter. They were fast, their movements like shadows, but the humans fought with desperation. They knew this was their last chance. Mara and Finn fought side by side, their weapons sensing perfectly as they took down a Hunter soldier. But the numbers were overwhelming. The Varlock commander, though injured, was still standing. His eyes glowed with a fierce, murderous intent. Eli took a deep breath, his mind working quickly. He couldn't let the Aether Cannon fall into their hands again. "Rick," Eli shouted, "get to the cannon. We need another shot." Rick, who had been hesitating in the background, finally looked up. His face was pale, but there was determination in his eyes. He nodded and rushed toward the cannon. Eli's pulse quickened. The battle was turning into chaos. The Varlock and Hunter were relentless, but the humans fought with everything they had. They had nothing left to lose. Rick reached the cannon, and with trembling hands, he pulled the lever again. The Aether Cannon fired once more, a powerful wave of energy rippling through the room. The blast hit the Varlock commander, this time with enough force to send him flying across the room, his body crumpling into a heap. The Hunter soldiers faltered for a moment, their confidence shaken. That was all the humans needed. With one final push, they drove the Hunter back, forcing them into retreat. Eli looked around at the destruction, his chest heaving with exhaustion. They had done it. They had won. But the war was far from over. The Varlock and Hunter would return. This was only the beginning. "We survived," Mara said, panting. "But we'll need to be ready. They'll be back." Eli nodded grimly. "We'll be ready." For the first time in a long time, the humans had struck back, and they wouldn't stop until they had taken back their world. The battle was over, but the aftermath left a heavy silence. The once humming walls of the government building now stood still, their echoes fading into the quiet. The team gathered around the fallen Varlock commander, their faces weary, covered in dust and blood. The Aether Cannon, which had saved them, still hummed quietly in the corner. Eli took a deep breath, wiping the sweat from his brow. The Varlock and Hunter had retreated, but he knew they hadn't seen the last of them. The war was far from over. "Is it done?" Finn asked, stepping forward, his eyes scanning the room. For now, Eli said, his voice firm but tired. But the war isn't over. This fight was just one battle. We've won, but the enemy will regroup. We have to be ready for the next wave. Mara looked around at the ruins. We've survived, but it doesn't feel like a victory. How many more will die before this is all over? We can't think about that now, Eli said. We have to focus on what we can do next. The enemy might be gone for now, but they'll come back stronger. We need to find a way to strike back harder. Rick, standing at the edge of the group, looked uneasy. He hadn't said much since the battle ended, and Eli knew he was still struggling with his past. The betrayal he'd committed weighed on him, but he hadn't turned away from the fight. Rick, Eli said, his voice low but serious. You've been through a lot. We all have. But now is the time to choose. Are you with us or against us? Rick hesitated, his eyes filled with guilt. But then he nodded slowly, determination setting in. I'm with you. I'll fight for Earth. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'll earn it. Eli nodded, accepting his words. It wasn't easy to trust him, but they needed every hand they could get. The team worked quickly to gather any useful equipment and supplies from the building. The mission wasn't over, and they needed to get back to their base before the enemy regrouped. They didn't know how long they had, but Eli could feel the pressure mounting. Every minute counted. As they made their way back to the underground base, the landscape outside felt different. The ruins of the city, once vibrant and full of life, now seemed like a battlefield, empty, desolate, and scarred by the war. But despite everything, there was a glimmer of hope in the air. They had fought back, and they had won. We can't stay here for long, Finn said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. The enemy will have sent reinforcements. They'll be looking for us. Eli nodded. We'll head out, but we need to keep moving forward. We can't let them catch us off guard again. As they entered their base, Eli noticed the team was exhausted but alive. It was a feeling they hadn't had in a long time. A small, quiet victory. But even as they rested, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that the enemy was already planning their next move. The battle for Earth wasn't over. It had only just begun. That night, as the team sat around a small campfire in the base, the weight of the day's events settled over them. They had won, but at what cost? Eli stared into the flames, his mind racing with thoughts of the future. They had to stay ahead of the enemy. They couldn't afford to make mistakes. We need to build our strength, Eli said, breaking the silence. We can't keep relying on one weapon. We need an army, a real one. It's time to start planning for the future. Finn nodded. We've got the technology. We can rebuild. We'll need time, though. We'll make time, Mara added. We have to. There's no turning back now. Rick, sitting beside the fire, spoke up quietly. I'll do whatever it takes to help. I don't know what I can offer, but I'll give everything. Eli looked at him, then nodded. We'll all give everything. Together, we'll turn the tide. The night passed slowly, filled with quiet conversation and careful planning. The team knew they were far from ready, but for the first time in a long while, they felt like they had a chance. They were no longer just running from the enemy. They were fighting back. The next morning, Eli stood at the base's entrance, looking out at the horizon. The world was different now, scared by war, yes, but still standing. And for the first time, Eli could see a future. The battle was far from over, but the human race wasn't done yet. The enemy had underestimated them. They thought Earth was weak, that the humans would fall without a fight. But they were wrong. We're not finished, Eli muttered to himself, clenching his fists. We're just getting started. With his team by his side, Eli knew they had a chance. They had a weapon. They had the will to fight. And most importantly, they had each other. The dawn of a new hope was rising. The air inside the underground base was thick with tension. Eli stood at the command center, his eyes fixed on the holographic map in front of him. The map displayed their location, the enemy's strongholds, and everything they had learned so far. Every red dot on the screen represented an enemy outpost, places where the Varlock and Hunter had regrouped and were preparing for the next attack. "We don't have much time," Eli said, his voice low and urgent. "We've hit them hard, but they're coming back stronger. We have to hit them before they can strike first." Finn, standing beside him, adjusted the settings on a nearby control panel. "The ether cannon is recharged, and we've got a few other weapons ready, but we don't have enough firepower to face an army." Eli turned to the others. "We're not facing just an army. We're facing an enemy that won't stop until we're all wiped out. But we have something they don't." "And what's that?" Mara asked, her voice sharp with determination. "Hope," Eli replied, his eyes locking with hers. "The will to fight. We've shown them that we're not just victims. We're survivors. We'll take the fight to them." Rick, who had been quiet for most of the planning, stepped forward. "We've got the element of surprise. We know their movements. We've got a chance to hit them before they can regroup." "Exactly," Eli said. "We've learned everything we can from the intel we've gathered. We use that to our advantage. The enemy won't expect us to strike back so soon." Finn looked up from the console. "I've been working on a new strategy. If we hit their supply lines, we can cripple their ability to fight back. But we'll need to move fast." Mara crossed her arms. "And we'll need to be smart. We can't afford to make mistakes this time." "We won't," Eli said firmly. "We'll take what we have, use it wisely, and hit them where it hurts. If we don't, there won't be a future for any of us." The team gathered around the map, their faces grim but determined. They knew what was at stake. It was no longer just about survival. It was about taking back their planet. Hours later, the team set out under the cover of darkness. They traveled light, only bringing the essential weapons and tools they needed for the mission. Eli led the way, his mind focused on the mission ahead. The streets were eerily quiet as they moved through the abandoned city, the buildings that once held life now silent monuments to the destruction that had come before. The team reached the outskirts of the enemy's stronghold by dawn. They had moved swiftly, staying hidden in the shadows. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and metal, the remnants of battles fought long ago. Eli motioned for everyone to stop. "We're close. Finn, Rick, take the north side. Mara and I will head for the supply depot. We hit them fast and hard. No hesitation." Finn nodded. "Got it. We'll meet back here in 20 minutes. No more." The team split into two groups, moving quickly and quietly through the enemy's territory. The Varlock and Hunter were scattered, their forces spread thin across the area. They didn't expect humans to strike so soon, and that was exactly what Eli was counting on. As Eli and Mara approached the supply depot, they could hear the faint hum of alien machinery. The depot was heavily guarded, but Eli knew they had no choice but to take it. If they could cut off the enemy's supply lines, they would cripple their entire operation. Mara crouched beside Eli. "We go in, take out the guards, and plant the explosives. We don't need to fight, just disrupt their supplies." Eli nodded. "Exactly. Let's move." They moved like shadows, avoiding patrols and slipping past the guards. They reached the depot's entrance without being seen, and Eli quickly set the charges while Mara kept watch. Every second felt like an eternity, the silence around them heavy with anticipation. "Charges set," Eli whispered. "Let's get out of here." They made their way back to the rendezvous point. As they moved, the ground suddenly shook beneath their feet. A low rumble echoed through the air, followed by a series of explosions. The supply depot had been destroyed. Eli glanced at Mara. Time to go. They sprinted back to the meeting spot where Finn and Rick were already waiting. The blast had sent shockwaves through the area, and the enemy would be scrambling to respond. The team had succeeded in their mission, but there was no time to celebrate. "We've done it," Finn said, his face grim but relieved. "The supply lines are cut. The enemy will be in chaos. Rick nodded. But they won't give up that easily. They'll come for us. Eli looked around at his team. We're not done. But this was a big blow. They'll know we're serious now. And that's exactly what we need. As they made their way back to the base, Eli felt a small spark of hope deep within him. They had struck a decisive blow against the enemy, and for the first time, he felt like they might have a chance. But the war was far from over, and the enemy would come back stronger. The battle is just beginning, Eli muttered, looking out over the dark horizon. But we've proven something today. We can win, and we will.